conferences, and today I will have the distinct pleasure of sharing this Sunday morning press conference with the very distinguished attorney at law, Mr. Soren Sobers, who continues to serve the United National Congress on its national executive in the capacity as a policy and strategy officer, and from time to time continues to serve our great party in the upper house, the Senate of Trinidad and Tobago. And today, both of us will be concentrating on the theme, the broad theme, PNM's continued assault on law-abiding citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And those of you who are listening to us via the respective social media platforms and so on will have come to the realization that Trinidad and Tobago has indeed collapsed under the government and leadership of Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley. There is no hope on the horizon, and it is very clear that there is no job creation, there is no economic growth for the last 7 years. We are into their 8th year as the government of Trinidad and Tobago. 150,000 persons have lost their jobs, and counting. Crime is the order of the day. In fact, we are on course, and I say this with no great sense of pleasure or joy, but we are on course to realize a national record as it relates to the number of murders in Trinidad and Tobago. This is a government that continues to attack the democracy of this country, erode the constitutional framework of this country on all fronts. And this is why we have chosen the theme, PNM's continued assault on law-abiding citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And yesterday, we celebrated International Men's Day, and we in the United National Congress and in Trinidad and Tobago, we continue to observe the hardships that men in our society continue to have. As providers for our families, it is increasingly difficult to comfortably provide, given the economics of Trinidad and Tobago under the PNM, what we have come to know as Rowleynomics. Jobs are harder to find, the cost of living is exponentially increasing as never have been seen, and men continue to face challenges as the protectors of our families, our loved ones, and ourselves. Have commented on the crime situation in Trinidad and Tobago, and in fact, we continue to see a number of young men being jailed for crime and criminal activities and so on as it relates to gangs. And we also see that workplace accidents continue to affect men in terms of repeated deaths and tragedies in the work environment. And on top of all this, we regret that the Prime Minister, who is expected to be the leading role model for males in this country, has turned out to be the exact opposite of being a gentleman. And what men and boys are expected to emulate, I don't know if they are looking for him in terms of leadership and direction. Today too, our party takes the opportunity to celebrate World Children's Day, which is being observed worldwide, and we all know the rights of the child and the Universal Declaration of the Rights of the Child by the United Nations and so on. And we, the United National Congress, under the leadership of Kamla Persad Bissessar, we have the firm opinion and conviction that no child must be left behind. In fact, we have always advocated for the inclusion of every child. And that is why we in the United National Congress was proud to be part of a government that she led, that advocated and in fact delivered policies, implemented policies and programs for the benefit of children. And we can today boast of the laptop program, which was so shamelessly dismantled by the government of Prime Minister Dr. Rowley, and today they are putting their tails between their legs and they are re-implementing this laptop program. We were able to build early childhood education centers throughout the length and breadth of Trinidad and Tobago, and in fact this policy program of the partnership government was lauded, was praised by the former United Nations General Secretary Ban Ki-moon for the work that was done by the government of Trinidad and Tobago. In fact, we were able to build 100 schools throughout the length and breadth of this country today. Sadly, some of them have been left to languish, they have been desecrated, they have been destroyed because of a government not focusing on the well-being of the child. This, we were able to put forward over 400 scholarships on an annual basis. This too has been dismantled by this government, and the GATE program that we champion on behalf of children in this country has again been shamelessly dismantled and contracted when it should be expanded in terms of focusing on the future of our children and our loved ones, our young ones, preparing them to be the leaders of tomorrow. They have little or no hope at this point in time under the government of Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley. And today we also remember the abused children. We call upon the government to focus on the abuse that has been taking place in our children's home, deal with it in a very decisive manner, look at the Judith Jones report and focus on those who are culpable, implement the recommendation, and if indeed there are persons who have been left found to be wanting, bring them before the laws of Trinidad and Tobago and subject them to the judicial process and end the abuse to our children throughout the length and breadth of this country. With these words now, I turn over to the very distinguished Attorney at Law, Mr. Sean Sobers, Policy and Strategy Officer of the United National Congress, who continues to serve our great party, as I said, as a senator from time to time in the Senate of Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you very much, MP Inder Singh, and good morning to the members of the public and the members of the media who are present here today. This morning, unfortunately, what has in fact become the norm within Trinidad and Tobago, it is incumbent upon us to deliver certain pertinent pieces of information to the public with respect to the ongoings with this government, this administration, and their poor handling of many disciplines within this country. Unfortunately, as it pertains to crime and criminality under the Ministry of National Security, we have seen for some time systematically headlines, issues, the voices of persons who become the victims of crime and criminality, piercing silence within Trinidad for some time. Crime is out of control. It has been out of control for quite some time under the PNM's administration for the last 7 years. When you have a Prime Minister of a country admitting to the country and to all international stakeholders at large that Trinidad and Tobago is in fact a violent society, then you must recognize that apart from the administration giving up on the fight against crime, they have properly well identified that crime is a significant problem within Trinidad. We are on a very unhappy and unfortunate trajectory that we would not like to be on as a society, as a developed society within the Western Hemisphere, to be on track for over 600 plus murders for the year. It is not a record that anyone is proud of, definitely not within the opposition, not within the United National Congress. It is something that we are extremely upset about. And that is why we constantly have these press conferences, these Monday night meetings, these midweek press conferences, to bring to the attention of those in authority that more needs to be done. That there's no longer a plea for persons to get involved and to get active and to treat with the situation aggressively. That this is now becoming a demand upon those who have been entrusted by the people of this country with respect to certain degrees of power and responsibility. And we constantly say it, our political leader says it all the time, that the PNM is a government, is an administration that loves power, but they do not like responsibility. And their lack of responsibility is playing out across all sectors of governance. MP Darcy will touch on significant issues that took place during the course of this week with respect to rampant flooding within this country. And crime and the Ministry of National Security is also an issue that is constantly failing under the hapless gaze of the Minister of National Security, Mr. Hines, MP Hines. Now, I always like to indicate squarely and prelucidly to the public, we didn't get here just yesterday. This didn't happen last week. This has been a constant de-evolution of criminal elements within this country. And I utilize the term de-evolution because it's not evolution. Evolution can never be connected or tethered to something that is evil. But the constant raising of criminal activity, the constant de-evolution of crime is in fact happening on a daily basis within this country. That you would have had some time ago issues with respect to robbery and murder no longer occurring within the night and under the cover of darkness, but taking place within broad daylight. Assaults taking place in public spaces, in places of worship being desecrated, indiscriminate shooting with high-powered rifles. That is the nature of the game that these people are playing with persons' lives within Trinidad and Tobago. And the end result of all of those things, unfortunately, where we have reached, as you continue along that type of trajectory, is collateral damage. That is the term being utilized. That is the term being utilized to marginalize, unfortunately, and to describe, unfortunately, the loss of innocent lives of persons who had nothing to do with that type of criminal activity, but losing their lives nonetheless. Because bullets do have eyes. The same way when you was growing up, they tell you stones do have eyes, bullets do have eyes. And unfortunately, the persons who are pulling the trigger, they don't have any training. So they're shooting indiscriminately at persons, at their victims, at their targets. And now we have instances where, apart from adults being victims, being marginalized, being described as collateral damage, you have children within the recent past falling prey to being victims of crimes, to being killed indiscriminately when they had absolutely nothing to do with situations like that. And then the most unfortunate thing about an issue like that is that the persons with responsibility in this country, sometimes the MPs in charge of those areas, in those PNM control areas, say nothing. And then they would want to send their mouthpiece for this particular issue, MP Hines, to come and tell the public that, well, you know, he conducted an investigation. And MP Munilal always says this, you know, I think if they do what they're supposed to do and do it well, we would have no issues. You are a policy person within that ministry, supposed to provide the persons on the ground with the necessary tools, the information, the intelligence to do what they're supposed to do, resource them properly. Just do that. But you come in to tell the public and the population that you conduct an investigation, and you would have been told pursuant to those investigations that the people and the murderers, because that's what they are, they didn't come there to shoot each other, you know. They really come there to shoot up a house, to dissuade people from coming to a party. And it is unfortunate that the child was killed. And that is the excuse that has been proffered to the public by the Minister of National Security. What are you to do with that? What are we to do with that in the opposition? Other than get flipping mad about it? Because it is embarrassing for someone within authority to speak like that, to give information like that, to offer that as an excuse for a ridiculous problem that we have in this country. Do your job. Just do that alone. That's all we are asking. And then even worse coming down the road now, within recent times, the police service has been discovering a lot of hacked off limbs all over this country, where attempts are being made to clandestinely get rid of evidence so that persons cannot be identified after they are killed. The acting commissioner of police would have indicated recently as well too that there is an emergence and rise in foreign gang activity within this country. Something that the United National Congress spoke about many years ago when that policy was coming into place with respect to the assimilating of persons from South America, Venezuela in particular. We have no issue with our Venezuelan brothers and sisters. We understand the need to assist, but do it in a correct way, in a proper way. Establish proper protocols to treat with assimilating them within the country. We spoke about that. Many of us who would have practiced in immigration or practiced in the criminal arena, we know how difficult it is to procure criminal tracing with respect to these individuals from Interpol. But yet in one swoop, you have all of them lining up by the stadium and you're running around in some security vest and with a set of machine gun as if people are supposed to be concerned and believe that you know what you're doing. But 99.9% of those persons who would have received cards, when did the criminal tracing come in for those persons? Have they even come in for those persons? And subsequent to receiving criminal tracing, if you recognize that these persons are wanted for various crimes in South America and Venezuela, what did you do thereafter, if anything at all? And what can you do? Do you believe then that if you're procuring the tracing now, the address that they give you then, when they were signing up for the card, they feel that they're going to be living there still? How much time do you swing by the house and they're not there? And they're running around indiscriminately within this country, unchecked, unmatched. And you will tell the public what? Those studying the UNC, they're only fear-mongering. Every time that they have this card, they're supposed to report to immigration. How many of them not reporting to immigration? Tell the public that. These are the questions that we are putting to you. And we know that you don't have the answers because you are incapable. You are bankrupt of ideas. And you are playing vaps, loose and foolish with persons' lives within this country. And that is what upsets us most as an opposition. The value of life. It matters not to you. But we hear it all the time. Ed Anderson could tell you the amount of phone calls he gets and many others in your position to treat with situations like this that you have the responsibility to deal with. But as an alternative government in waiting, we are dealing with it in our own way. The meager ways that we can assist, we do. We run our bloods to water to assist. That is our responsibility. And we wear it properly well upon our shoulders. And within this week, to add to all of that, you now have the killing of state witnesses, individuals who have come forward, who have had the temerity, the bravery, the knowingness to come forward, to say the right thing. I've seen something and I'm minded to say something. And what is the position when some persons do that, unfortunately? It brings me no pleasure to bring this information to you as a public, because I understand, having practiced within the criminal jurisdiction, that it is essential for prosecution of individuals that criminal witnesses come forward, that they indicate what they've seen, and that an opportunity is given for defense counsel to cross-examine them. That is an integral part in the fight against crime within this country. Because the murder rate is what it is. Crime within this country is what it is. And that is largely because we've said on a number of occasions, the detection rate is abysmally low. But for those who are in fact caught, and that matters have to go through the system in and of itself, you need these witnesses, you need forensic evidence, information coming forward to build a foolproof, airtight case against these individuals so that they can be properly convicted and serve time. But when you have a disconnect with respect to the witnesses and the forensic evidence, you're going to lose the matters before the court. That's not rocket science. That's what is taking place. So when you have witnesses being murdered who are supposed to be under witness protection, because we have a program like that, and that is what I'm here today to really speak about, it raises significant questions that we must ask the Minister of National Security. So within the last week, we would have had two persons who would have been witnesses to significant issues within this country, Jelano Romney he would have been killed, he would have been involved in terms of witnessing the unfortunate death of the police officer, would have been shot some time ago earlier this year in Diego Martin. And you had his lawyer indicating in an interview that Mr. Romney, his lawyer, Mr. Williams, Christian J. Williams, would have told reporters, radio listeners, that his former client, Jelana Romney, 29, was not offered witness protection and was left in the same environment that ultimately led to his death. That is what took place with him. And we are asking the Minister of National Security and the Acting Commissioner of Police, why wasn't he offered witness protection? There was another gentleman earlier this week, Mark Reni Mohammed, who the papers, there was an investigative piece, I believe, by Mark Bassan that would have indicated that Mr. Mohammed would have been working in customs as a clerk. He had a lot of information with respect to the ongoings of illegal and illicit activity coming within the country, guns and drugs and others. And he was providing information to the police, who was utilizing that information to stop these things, capture these guns before they hit the streets. And Mr. Mohammed was gunned down. And the question again I put to the Minister of National Security and the Acting Commissioner of Police, why wasn't he offered witness protection? This issue with respect to state witnesses being killed within this country is nothing new. And I always say, unfortunately, Trinbagonian citizens wake up. You have a 5-day old memory. You only remember things when it is extremely graphic and gory, and not for long. This is not the first time it has happened. The 18th of June 2019, I remember that. I was in the Senate then. And one Candy Ann McIntyre, she was gunned down. You know where she was gunned down? She was carrying her 12-year-old son to graduation. And the murderers killed her in front of the son. And everybody was up in arms. Why did this thing happen? And as information kept coming out, we recognized that Mrs. McIntyre had given evidence against certain individuals before the court. So she was a witness. And she was murdered. And everybody then asked, in 2019, what was the state of witness protection within this country? Because it was so shocking to them and awful that something like that had happened. And nobody said anything about it. Nothing tangible came from the ministry with respect to that. And this is all connected to the PNM's systematic dismantling of crime-fighting apparatus within this country. The systematic dismantling of technical and vocational programs for at-risk youth who will then find themselves within gang and gangland activity. And essentially, the under-resourcing of crime-fighting services within this country. One of them today that we are going to delve into is witness protection. And their response to all of that would be to tell you foolishness, we need more legislation, we need bail legislation. Something I was reading today in the papers, they want bail again. Bail for what? No bail for what? When you look statistically at all the levels and the numbers of murders throughout the years, it had no bail all then. No bail for murder was a thing all the time up until March of this year. Akini Charles. That's the case on point. And the murder rate was still exponentially high. So we are asking you, as per normal, why no bail? What is the efficacy of doing that? Why are you running from the things that you're supposed to fix that require political will? But your quick talk is no bail. And after saying that you need legislation that doesn't make any sense, because you can't proffer any reasonable or palatable reason for asking for the legislation, the next thing is to blame certain entities. So initially you might start off blaming, well, the port. Guns coming through the port, legal entries, we know about that, so it's a guns coming through there, so blame the customs officials there. But there are no jammers on the port, no scanners rather on the port, and we've asked you about that. And then we've come to find the scanners are working. And that has been so for some time and they haven't fixed it. But instead of fixing that, you want to blame the customs officers and the customs clerks. Hits coming out from the prison, murder coming out from the prison, contraband being found within the prison, And the response to that is to blame the prison officials and the prison officers. And when we ask you about the jammers that's supposed to be there, you had the acting commissioner of the prisons telling you he don't know nothing about the jammers. He's never seen any jammers within the prisons. But young Etol and others, and Hines and others, running up and down the place to tell you about jammers, which do not exist. And when blaming customs officers and blaming prison officials is not enough, you want to blame the opposition. We're not patriotic. And nothing could be farther from the truth. Nothing could be farther from the truth. The mere existence of witness protection in this country, you know where that came from? A UNC administration in 2000 under the Justice Protection Act, pursuant to then Attorney General Ramesh Lawrence Maharaj bringing that act to Parliament. The UNC brought that. Just like many other crime-fighting bills and tools and acts and legislation that has been passed within this country, it is because of the UNC strengthening the legislation, because of the poor pieces of legislation that they bring to the Parliament on a daily occasion when they are there, wasting time. But what is the state subsequent to the UNC bringing in witness protection within this country? What is the state of witness protection in this country? I have spoken to persons involved in that agency, reliable information. And this is to put it squarely so that the Minister of National Security, hearing what is transparent, can get involved. Because these officers, these individuals have been crying out for change, crying out for assistance, but no one is assisting them. Witness protection in this country under the PNM currently falls under the Ministry of National Security. And I say the PNM specifically, and I'll tell you why later on. It is a quasi-arrangement between the Ministry of National Security and the TTPS. And it is totally under-resourced. And the reason that the arrangement is like that is because you have persons coming to give evidence and information against illicit activity and illicit individuals. And you don't really want the police 100% involved, because unfortunately, fortunately the majority of police officers in this country, excellent, hardworking, hardworking individuals. But they are the one or two bad eggs, because it's a human organization, so you must expect that. So to ensure that there's protection for these individuals, these witnesses, the arrangement with respect to the police is not, they don't fully engage them. So it falls under the Ministry of National Security. You have a situation where there are two offices in Port of Spain and in San Fernando. And the North Office operates out of a particular area. It's not operating out of a police station because you want to keep the activities there clandestine, safe, secure for the witnesses. But in San Fernando, the place was too dilapidated. So instead of trying to treat with the situation, you have them operating out of a police station now. So every Tom, Dick and Harry who passing through that police station know that these individuals say they belong to witness protection. So if one illicit individual has a hook into a police officer, unfortunately, he could get that information and kill that witness. That is the position with respect to witness protection within this country. That the houses that persons are stored at, they are not properly provided for. They are not well resourced. Witness protection in these homes is not what you see on TV. This is not the bodyguard with Whitney Houston. They don't have no steel door. There are no alarm systems. There are no fiber optic line or anything like that running through the house. There's no cameras, security cameras in these homes. Police officers have to use tactics on their own to protect the witnesses. Sometimes putting a little chair by the door so in the event somebody rattling the door, they can hear the door with the chair. Breaking glass to put on the floor in the event somebody enters the home, they can hear the glass on the floor crackling. This is what they do. That is witness protection in Trinidad and Tobago under Hines and the PNM. These houses don't have proper resources. They don't have tea, water, toilet paper. The witnesses are provided with a stipend and they have to go and buy these things for the house. They hear what I'm telling you, Trinidad and Tobago? And sometimes the witness money run out. So you know how to buy toilet paper and water for the house? The police officers on their own salary And you want to encourage persons to come and give information. See something, say something. And that is how you treat them when they're in the state's custody. The police officers have outdated equipment. There's insufficient training for them. And they don't have proper vehicles to transport persons when the time comes. So when they're to buy the groceries, they literally have to take the witness and carry him to a grocery store to purchase these groceries for the home. That's madness. That is madness. And in terms of transportation, if you have to carry the witness to court or carry him to give a deposition or a statement, they're using vehicles that 12 and 15 years old. I am reliably informed that unfortunately in one instance, a witness had to give information against some gangsters in the Beaton. And while transporting the witness to court, the vehicle that they were going into broke down. Where? On the Beaton. The witness had to come out and help the police change the tire and thing. That is what is going on. That is what is going on with witness protection. This cannot be serious. They can't be serious. And on top of all of that, persons are, when they are brought in with respect to this witness protection program, they are told all sorts of things. They say, well, listen, when you want this matter finish, after you give up 7 and 10 years of your life, because you know the criminal justice system is within this country, we will organize for you to have you repatriated to another country where we have counterpart organizations that will treat with you, and they will house you, and you know you have to lend as an informed a member of society and positively and whatnot, and all these fanciful things they tell you after you sign a little arrangement with them. And after you spend 10 and 12 years of your life within witness protection, and it's time for repatriation, you're not going for any cushy job or to receive any huge salary somewhere in some fancy place in the US or England or something like that, you know. Our relations with these counterpart agencies have broken down within the last 7 years. And so some of them don't want to hear us. And those that do, unfortunately, when you are repatriated with the greatest of respect, you're not getting any fancy job for you and your family. You're being placed in unfortunate circumstances. They may place you to work in a restaurant or something like that after you've chosen to do the right thing. We want this fixed. That's why I'm bringing this to the attention. I'm not bringing it to the attention of the public because we don't want persons to come forward. We want persons to come forward, but we want them, when they are in state's care and custody, to be comforted, to be protected, to be resourced. That's what we want. And it's not to say that they don't have the money, you know. They have the money. They lack the political will. Because when it comes time to politically witch on people, they are going to go and charge this one and to bring $40 million for SRP from the UK and to pay a certain money for Nelson prosecution and then to politically witch on people, they have the money. But when it comes to taking care of citizens of this country who have chosen to do the right thing, to put their lives at risk, you don't have the money to resource them and to make them comfortable. And why I said at the beginning, at the genesis of my contribution, that this is under the PNM, because under Kamla Persad administration, there was a specific ministry understanding what she was getting herself into, understanding the needs of the national security apparatus within Trinidad and Tobago. She created the Ministry of Justice to take away from some of these heavily burdened ministries to deal with these issues. And that's what the Justice Ministry was there for. They dealt with witness protection as well too. And they were properly well resourced. The officer told me, boy, under the UNC, I used to at least have a little Milo and coffee to drink. Now when I do witness protection, it's like I'm mining 2 houses. Gotta mine the witness protection house too. And I mine my family home. 2 sets of groceries had to do when the man come. How could that be a serious administration? How could you be serious about offering solutions, crime fighting solutions, that problem that is plaguing Trinidad and Tobago in the way in which it is, when situations like this is playing out on a daily basis? You are putting people's lives at risk and you care nothing about them. Clearly your priorities are mixed up because you value placing $40 million in the hands of other persons, SRPs, to do all sorts of foolishness instead of treating with the real issues that are coming up on a daily basis within this country. And MP Darcy will get into that, especially when it comes to flooding and the money that they get and what they do with it and the excuses that they advance. Trinidad and Tobago, you need to wake up. This is a significant problem, and it is a part of a wider issue and wider problems that constantly emanate from the PNM. Their priorities have always been skewed. They do not take you seriously, save and except when it comes time to vote. And then when they get the vote, you can't hear from them. They rubbish you down. It has come to the point where persons now, apart from being victims of all sorts of other incidents within this country, catastrophic in nature, they are losing their lives by the day. And eventually, when you have a situation like this within the criminal justice system, where all, not some, but all the cogs in the wheel are not working, you're going to have a total breakdown in democracy in this country and the rule of law. Because nobody will be afraid of anybody else again. And you may very well have a situation like Haiti or Burkina Faso, where gangsters will be running this country if they're not doing it already. It is incumbent upon you, the everyday citizen, who is recognizing, who becomes seized and possessed of the information, whether it comes from MP Narsingh, myself, or the opposition. But once it gets out there, to do something about it, to ask sober questions, and to demand a positive response. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Attorney at Law Sean Sobers, for focusing on the government's inability to display the political will as it relates to fighting crime in Trinidad and Tobago, because they will come with their propaganda and nonsense and tell you that they need more legislation when they cannot display the political will to deal with the witness protection program, the non-existence of infrastructure, of safe homes. Scanners are not working at the ports of Trinidad and Tobago, whether it is the port of Port of Spain or the port of Point Lisas and so on. And yet you will not hear from the government what they are doing. And we have heard about the state of the jammers within the prison services of Trinidad and Tobago. And today, I want to continue to show to Trinidad and Tobago how the government continues its assault on law-abiding citizens. We know that they are attacking the democracy of the country. They are attacking the Constitution. They are attacking independent institutions. And today, we will want to focus on the abuse of power, corruption, the breach of trust, and outright theft of taxpayers' money by those within the government of Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley. And we have to ask the question, and I will continue to ask it this morning to Dr. Rowley and his cabinet members, tell us where the money gone. And in that regard, yesterday, newspapers, all of the newspapers had on the headline, THA Chief Secretary unveiled PNM Tourism Project. $2.5 million paid to a ghost firm for zipline. That was the news day. Then the Express was the headline. Bold, big and bold, bring corruption law now. Regulator calls for the proclamation of the Procurement Act. And he said in very clear language, no more consultation is needed. That is Munilal Lalchan, the procurement regulator. And the subheadline, Fali, Zipline Company does not exist. Zipline Company does not exist. And the Guardian, Ghost Firm. The Guardian, Ghost Firm, fresh controversy over 2.5 THA zipline deal, and Fali reveals BVI company doesn't exist, and two locals duped then PNM into contract. You see, Trinidad and Tobago, we have to address the issue because we have a duty to focus too on the former PNM-led Tobago House of Assembly and the missing $1 million, because the headlines have made it very clear that $2.5 million was paid to a ghost, a non-existent company. So the government of Prime Minister Dr. Rowley is ziplining in and out of the treasury of Trinidad and Tobago. And we must never forget that this was a House of Assembly then, where $8.8 million intended to be paid or wired to Virgin Atlantic was sent to a wrong account number. Also, a $1.6 million, which was intended to be wired to a tourism agent in Miami, was sent to the wrong account number. So, in terms of finances and ghost companies and non-existent companies, this seems to be, you only hear these things where a criminal enterprise has taken control of transactions, and I am forced to ask the question, was the THA House of Assembly and the then government linked to what we would call the operation of a criminal enterprise? Because you see, the Prime Minister may want to distance himself, but I want to remind Trinidad and Tobago of some articles that appeared, the headline, The Guardian of Friday the 22nd of January 2021. The headline read, Rowley instructs Tracy to continue the zipline project. And another in the Express, January 21st of 2021, the headline was, Get Zipline Project Done. This was written by Ria Tate. And I quote from that article today, I staunchly, this is the Prime Minister speaking up, I staunchly approve the idea that the THA should build a zipline so that locals and foreigners could ride that zipline. End of quote. And on the news day of Thursday, 21st of January 2021, PM tells, the headline was, PM tells Davidson Celestine, build zipline, quote, open quote, as THA Chief Sec, end quote. And the article read as follows, the Prime Minister has instructed PNM Tobago Council political leader Tracy Davidson Celestine to restart the stalled zipline project as one of her priorities if she becomes Chief Secretary after the January 25th THA elections. And today, the opposition will continue to press in the public domain and ask the Prime Minister to tell us who knew what, who colluded with who, and who knew that there was no company existing, but yet the go-ahead was being given. The Prime Minister was instructing the then political leader and telling her, if you became the THA chief secretary, ensure that this project is being done. So taxpayers' money was being paid to a non-existent company, a ghost company, and these things come to the fore only when a criminal enterprise is in charge. Prime Minister, where is the transparency? Where is the accountability? Where is the good governance? And you know what? I am forced to reflect. A former Minister of Labour who happens to be a constituent of mine in the constituency of Cuba South, Jennifer Baptiste Primus, who is running in the internal elections of the PNM. I hold no brief for none of them. She gone some way and saying we must forgive the PNM. Forgive the PNM for what? Forgive the PNM so that you could return to the cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago and facilitate the corruption and the lack of accountability, transparency, and good governance. Today I tell Trinidad and Tobago, don't listen to Jennifer Baptiste Primus to forgive the PNM. We must forget the PNM throughout the length and breadth of Trinidad and Tobago. And then the chairman for candidate for in the internal elections, the Minister of Energy and Energy Affairs, Stuart Young, appeared on the barbershop program yesterday to tell the country that the PNM must go back to the ground and reconnect with the people in the 41 constituencies. And to the 8th year of mismanagement, nepotism, corruption, lack of accountability and good governance, they want to reconnect and they want forgiveness in terms of governing Trinidad and Tobago. And this leads me straight into continue this focus on asking the Prime Minister and his cabinet ministers, where did the money go for the last 7.5 into their 8th year of government? Because you see, over the last couple of weeks, Trinidad and Tobago has seen sustained flooding and infrastructural collapse throughout the length and breadth of this country. And in fact, only last week, I had to hear from the Member of Parliament for Port of Spain South, Mr. Keith Scotland. When Abattoir Road and Port of Spain was flooded out and so on, you know, this fella told the country you must, to deal with high food prices, you must go back to coal pots and the energy, fuel costs, the increase in fuel costs and transportation costs. You must ride a bicycle to go to work and so on. Into the 8th year, he said an investigation, they're governing Trinidad and Tobago for the last 8 years. He said an investigation must now be launched into flooding in Port of Spain and Abattoir Road and so on. Our capital city, the entire city, Colville Street, Richmond Street, Edward Street, South Quay, Chacon Street, Independence Square, Henry Street, Sackville Street, St. Vincent Street, Beetham Gardens, the Priority Bus Route, Mount Hope, Tunapuna, Lopino, Trin City, St. Augustine, Aruka, Arima, Old Road, Fairways in Maraval, Cocorie, Diego Martin West, Diego Martin Northeast, Diego Martin Central, PNM control constituencies, Cocorie continue to suffer from sustained flooding and infrastructural collapse. Cali Bay, Caroni, Chase Village, Calcutta, Bokaro, entire communities of Oropouche West and Oropouche East, Pinal Debe, Kunopia, Kelly Village, Las Lomas, El Carmen, Madras Road, Warrenville, Manzanilla, Grande, San Grande, Point Radix, and within Maruga, Tableland, Ravinsabel, Caparo, and so on. And what I will present to you very quickly, because my colleagues, whether they are from Komoto, Manzanilla, flooding in Komoto, Guayco, Tamina Coal Mine, Tamina, North Oropouche, the San Grande Main Road, the Manzanilla Stretch, the Nariva Swamp, which houses over 500 farmers and provides food to the agricultural production of Trinidad and Tobago. In Naparima, there are little bit potholes and landslips, especially in Gulja Road, Kanhai Road, St. Croix Road, and Lengua. The bridge on the Ghat Road near Williamsville is virtually in collapse. Near collapse in Kuvanot, MP Rakiram has advised me that the Ragunanan Road West Bridge has collapsed. Rup Singh Road Bridge has collapsed. The Randy Carter Bridge, which is a bridge that provides a critical route for farmers to transport their agricultural produce, that is non-functional. In Caroni East, the Lalu Bridge in Kunopia has collapsed after numerous appeals for a presentation, and this bridge facilitates a route for farmers on the NAMDEFCO program for COVID-19 hampers to transport thousands of pounds of agricultural produce. And in this area, which has cut off people, over 50 farmers need this bridge, and over 100 persons or homes exist in this community. And then there is the flooding in the Kunupia River, the constriction of the water course that is causing flooding in Chin Chin, Montplaisir Road, Rangoli Trace, and so on. MP Haynes has advised me in Tabakit in terms of Guaracara, Corozal, and Gasparillo. There is a landslip on the Guaracara Road where quarrying operations is also taking place. The Lightbourne Road Bridge has collapsed. MP Ram in Caroni Central has advised me that Indian Trail, which I serve part of, has collapsed. It is no longer impassable in terms of vehicular traffic and so on. In Maya Road, there has been a total collapse of the road network. The Naparima Maya Road, MP Parry has advised me that the entire Point Radix Road, leading to critical national security infrastructure and telecommunications, has collapsed. This Point Radix Road hosts essential infrastructure for the Ministry of National Security, Digital and Flow, and also Caribel has important communication for the energy sector. There's widespread flooding in Poole, Navet, Mafikin, Charuma, Manzanilla, and in Princestown, the MP Barry Padara had advised me of the collapse of the St. Julian Road about 3 years ago. That collapse prevented fire services from reaching in a timely manner to put out a fire, and 2 of our elderly citizens perished, Trinidad and Tobago. And only on the 11th of November, in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago about a week ago, the Prime Minister, when I asked him about measures that was taken by the government in the last 72 hours to help affected citizens impacted by flooding and infrastructure collapse, the Prime Minister indicated to me, indicated to the Parliament and to the country, that the Ministry of Social Services and the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services continue to work with members of Parliament and councillors to provide temporary food relief to those who lost food supply as a result of flooding, and to make the disaster grants available. Today I could tell you that I have spoken to councillors, I have spoken to members of Parliament. There are no personnel from the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services doing any flood assessment. They are not on the ground. He spoke about a coordinating unit with the Ministries of Works, Public Utilities, National Security, Housing, Agriculture, as well as the ODPM, WASA, TNTEC, Defense Force, Municipal Police, National Quarries, and SWIMCOL have been established to provide equipment and relief to citizens. this is a prime minister who is blatantly lying and being a stranger to the truth in terms of Trinidad and Tobago. And the prime minister, because I just indicated to you, in terms of the infrastructural collapses, it's not only in UNC controlled constituencies, because you are seeing it throughout the length and breadth of Trinidad and Tobago. There was the collapse of the bridge by the prisons in Aruca, Golden Grove, and then somewhere in Dabudi, Omera, and so on. And as I said, there have been flooding in all of the constituencies controlled by the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance and so on. And today, they are absent, they are invisible, they have abandoned the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And I also want to ask the Minister of National Security, where is the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Management? Under whose responsibility, Minister Hein? It falls with you. I am of the firm conviction that the whole government approach alluded to by the Prime Minister is one of words, no action, propaganda, a stranger to the truth, deception. And we ask, where was the ODPM never kicked into full gear? They were never on the ground. They were never coordinating disaster responses, delivering assistance and aid in the national effort to make citizens feel that they care and they were safe. In fact, today we have seen major roadways have never been cordoned off with security personnel, with security barriers, signage to tell motorists and passengers and so on. For example, signage, road closed, heavy flooding, do not enter. And this is why, for example, in the Trantril area, and in Caparo and so on, you have persons having to abandon their vehicles. They are stranded. They are going down in water courses and so on because of a lack of care and the failure of the ODPM to be on the ground. Where's the 2 Wrangler Jeeps that they purchased and cost millions of dollars? Where is those Jeeps, Minister Hines and the head of the ODPM, in terms of being on the ground and rendering assistance to the ordinary people of Trinidad and Tobago? And this leads me, because Trinidad and Tobago, we have to ask the questions, where the money gone? Because today I want to put on the record the allocation to the Ministry of Works and Transport, and I want Trinidad and Tobago to listen very carefully. The 2016 budget, $1.915 billion was allocated. In 2017, $2.087 billion. In 2018, $3.091 billion. In 2019, $3.546 billion. In 2020, $2.956 billion. In 2021, $2.956 billion. In 2020, $3.577 billion. In 2023, $3.748 billion allocated to the Ministry of Works and Transport. A total of $23.876 billion allocated to the Ministry of Works and Transport. And in addition to that, I want you to listen very carefully. So, $23.876 billion to the Ministry of Works and Transport. And I want you to listen that the government continues to borrow from a bank called the Latin American Development Bank, or CAF. And on the 16th, and they cannot dispute it, so I want to put on record our sources to because they like to tell you the opposition come up with fake statistics and like to engage in fear mongering and so on. On the 16th of November 2022, an Express article written by Andrea Perez Sobas, and the headline was TT borrows $160 million from CAF to finance the government's digital drive and finance drainage work efforts in Port of Spain, Caridi, Caparo, South Oropouche and North Oropouche basins. Listen carefully, $160 million. In addition to that, on the 27th of July 2021, and I'm reading from, I've taken my information from the digital newsletter of this Latin American Development Bank, also known as CAF, and it reads that on the 27th of July 2021, CAF approves a $175 million loan to modernize the transportation infrastructure. And this credit, it goes on to say, will tackle activities to improve the quality of infrastructure with initiatives such as feasibility studies, modernization of our roads and airports, and road maintenance. Listen very carefully. And then on the 14th of August 2019, US, again from the CAF News digital online newsletter, on the 14th of August 2019, US $200 million, again, US $200 million from CAF to improve the roads of Trinidad and Tobago. And it reads, signed a loan agreement to provide free availability financing to improve Trinidad and Tobago's road network through a comprehensive development, maintenance, management, and planning to be carried out by the Ministry of Works and Transport. And also a media release from the Ministry of Finance website. I went on their website on the 6th of March, dated 2020. Trinidad and Tobago has received a grant in the amount of US $495 million, $495,000, sorry, or $3.37 million TT towards the creation of a flood management master plan. So we have $23.876 billion in budgetary allocation, $160 million US loan, $175 million loan again in US dollars, a further $200 million again in US from the CAF, and also a grant of $495,000 US dollars, or $3.37 million for flood management master plan. And 8 years into governing Trinidad and Tobago, MP Scotland telling you we must have an investigation and flood wreaking havoc throughout the length and breadth of Trinidad and Tobago. Where the money gone, Rohan Sinanan? And then the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development. Very quickly, 2016 budget $2.272 billion, 2017 budget $1.919 billion, 2018 budget $1.849 billion, 2019 budget $1.760 billion, 2020 budget $2.469 billion, 2021 budget $1.642 billion, 2022 budget $1.656 billion, 2023 budget $1.887 billion, a grand total of $15.454 billion. So if we do a rough estimate, 23 and 15 is 38. So this is nearly $39 billion. And when we add up the loans and grants, we could be going in the direction of over $90 billion when we do all the allocations and so on. And you have to understand, and what we have to ask the question here this morning to the Prime Minister, to the Minister of Works and Transport, Rohan Sinanan, and other members of the cabinet, where the money gone? Because why there is flooding, why nothing is being done to mitigate flooding, why there is more potholes and roads in Trinidad and Tobago, why bridges are collapsing in every nook and cranny of this country, why there are landslips, why there is a sense of hopelessness as it relates to drainage and so on. And we call upon the ministers to tell us, because the Minister of Finance, Carl Mimbert, said that he realized, or the country realized, an additional sum of revenue of $11 billion for fiscal 2022. And we want to know how much is being set aside to deal with infrastructural collapse, roads, drainage, bridges and so on. But I want Trinidad and Tobago to listen, because my colleague has touched on it in terms of where the money gone. The money not delivering goods and services to the ordinary people of this country. $40 million gone for political persecution. We must never forget a former commissioner of police told us that the government allocated $40 million for SRPs to come from England, and he was asked to why members of the opposition was not being arrested by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Then $441 million was spent on the restoration or refurbishment of the Red House. Today, after 2 years, the roof collapsed. I do not know from a health and safety point of view what will collapse again within the Red House. And Camille Robinson Regis wants to tell Trinidad and Tobago in the Parliament that we must be grateful for $441 million that was spent on shoddy works. The Prime Minister, Noel Garcia, must come out and tell the country, UDCOT must tell the country, how long will this refurbishment work last? Because if it was something simple, it would have been repaired in probably a week. How long will this refurbishment work be? How much it will cost the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago? And who will bear the cost? Noel Garcia. And you cannot get your roads and your sluice gates and your bridges and so on and fixed, because over $150 million and probably growing and counting was spent in terms of Nelson Gate to induce, to bribe, to politically persecute. And this is something that we will not rest upon. And then I also, in that whole issue about the Red House refurbishment, I challenge the Speaker of the House, the President of the Senate, and also on behalf of all parliamentarians and the parliamentary staff, for Noel Garcia, the entire board of UDCOT and the management and the Prime Minister, who holds the line responsibility for UDCOT, to tell us whether UDCOT will stand very firm and in an aggressive manner and seek a certificate of compliance from the OSH agency, which will indicate to all and sundry that all shortcomings have been addressed within the Red House, so that we will not see any collapse taking place in the future. We want to know if the building has been certified to be not a sick building and it meets and satisfies all the building codes and standards of a modern day building in Trinidad and Tobago. And you see, we will continue to ask Rohan Sinanan and his other cabinet colleagues where the money gone, because we must find out too what will be the real cost for the Prime Minister's house in Tobago, because they want to tell you that the opposition is fabricating figures. The opposition is speaking nonsense as it relates to asking the question, why did the cost move from 17 million to 63 million? And the Prime Minister and Noel Garcia, who is a known insider of the PNM, wants to tell you that the opposition engaging in propaganda and in mischief. The Hansard record, Prime Minister Noel Garcia showed that the cost of the project was $17.5 million. This was revealed by the late former Minister Franklin Khan on the 19th of May of 2020. It is on the Hansard. And on another occasion, an official document from the Office of the Prime Minister to the Parliament revealed that the cost moved to $848,736,920.56, and a further $10 million was being requested for the project in the government's draft estimates of expenditure for the financial year 2022. So it is not fabrication, it is based on official documents. And that is why flooding, bridges, road rehabilitation, drainage issues and so on cannot be addressed by the Ministry of Works and Transport and the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development and the whole government's approach, because your monies, taxpayers' monies, are being channeled in different directions and not for the benefit of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And as I said, why after these sums of monies have been allocated to the country, to the ministries, where the money gone, Rohan Sinanan. And I do not know if the shoddy work that we are seeing throughout the length and breadth of Trinidad and Tobago, and the fact that works cannot get started to deal with the infrastructural collapse in this country, that probably substandard work, shoddy work, contracts are being awarded and work is not being done, and monies are being channeled through donations into the construction of Balize House, because one of their own, who is contesting the post of political leader in their internal elections, Karen Nunez Teixeira, told us from an insider point of view, I think it has cost somewhere in the vicinity of $50 million. We do not know if another $50 million will be needed to complete Balize House. And we want to ask, because we want to know how many donations were given for the construction of Balize House, because the Minister of Works and Transport, Rohan Sinanan, told, if my memory serves me right, I am trying to jog my memory, but he made a public pronouncement that he knew how many $100 bills does fit in a carry box. He said that, and he said that in, I think was in the Senate, that Balize House, in terms of its construction, was being done through donation. So this morning, Mr. Minister Sidan, we want to ask how many donation of carry boxes and carry cases and so on found its way to Balize House.
Balize Palace.
And based on what we are seeing and what we are being told by insiders within the PNM, Balize House should be cordoned off with yellow tape or caution tape. It should be declared a crime scene. And this morning we call upon the acting commissioner of police to declare Balize House a crime scene, to cordon it off with caution tape, follow the money, and launch an investigation in terms of how many donations and carry boxes and how many $100 bills and so on for fitted in these carry boxes and donation boxes that made their way. And is it that in shoddy work is being compromised, shoddy work is being done by the contracting community? Is it that contracts are being awarded to ghost companies and so on, as we saw with what transpired in Tobago? And this is why we cannot deal with the infrastructure collapse in a very decisive manner, and the people of Trinidad and Tobago continue to suffer. The ball is in your court, Minister Rohan Sinanan, to tell us in terms of the donation and how the construction of Balize House is being financed. Because if that was the UNC, we would have been asked whether it is $5, $500, $5,000 or $5 million. Who are the UNC financiers? Everybody in all and sundry would have wanted to know where the money coming from, or who are the UNC. In fact, they would have published a list of UNC financiers and contractors and so on in relation to our business. Today, we demand to openness, transparency, and good governance on behalf of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley, based on your allocations to the Ministry of Works and Transport, the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, the loans taken by the government of Trinidad and Tobago to deal with road rehabilitation, flood mitigation and so on. Where is the National Flood Master Plan on behalf of the suffering people of Trinidad and Tobago that you and your government continues to distance the people? Thank you. And this morning we will now avail ourselves to questions from members of the media, if there are any. Well, if there are no questions from the media, myself and Attorney at Law Sean Sobers will like to thank members of the media for covering our press conference, and also for those of you who have been locked on for following this press conference, as we will continue to champion the issues affecting the people of Trinidad and Tobago in press conferences of this nature, our midweek press conferences, and also join us tomorrow night on the virtual platform, where our political leader and a powerful battery of speakers will continue to speak out on behalf of the people of Trinidad and Tobago.